It's just so beyond sex play. And honestly, it's so beyond how a lot of people operate in their like normal relationships, which is crazy to me because it's like an entire world that is like opened up that just removes all of these like societal constructs on how everything should be. And it puts you in such a vulnerable place of needing to, you know, figure it out with someone else.
Welcome to the Dom Sub Living podcast, where you'll learn how to break free from the vanilla rut, unlock your true potential as a dominant or submissive, and finally make BDSM a lifestyle. I'm your kinky guide, Alisandra. Today, we're going to do things a little different. I'm going to share an episode of a podcast where I was the guest, and this was actually back in 2021. So I had the privilege of being interviewed by Suzii. She's actually one of my followers, but she is the host of the Just Press Foreplay podcast, which, by the way, is a freaking awesome name for a podcast. And what I love about what we talk about in this interview is just how everyone's personal journey in BDSM is so unique. And what I love about Suzii is she really focuses on the mental aspects of sex and kink in her podcast. So you'll get to hear from us today talk about not just the practical aspects of BDSM, but the spiritual aspects too, which is really interesting. And I have a little secret to tell, and even Suzii doesn't know this either, but this was my first interview ever. She had been subscribed to my newsletter, and she just reached out to me and asked me to be on her podcast. And I was nervous, but I said yes. And she was really surprised and excited that I did say yes, but I was the one freaking out the whole time. I couldn't believe that someone asked me to be on a podcast, and this was going to be my first episode. So this episode just always has a special place in my heart, and she is just such a great interviewer, and she made everything so easy. And just coming out of the interview, I was really, so energized about kink and BDSM, and so I think you will too. And we just talk about so many great tips for improving your dom-sub relationship. So let's hear from Suzii today from justpressforeplay.com. Her podcast is all about mind fuckery and how the most erogenous zone is the mind. And I'm just really thankful that she let me share this interview on my podcast. So let's explore all of this. Here's the interview with Suzii from Just Press Foreplay.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your website, just so we can kind of introduce you a little.
Well, my name is Alisandra Madison, and I'm a full-time submissive to my dom, and he's also my husband. And I created Dom Sub Living as a way to help new and experienced kinksters kind of live the BDSM lifestyle more fully. And I do that through our free website, domsubliving.com, and also online trainings and one-to-one mentoring.
How long have you been doing that?
Oh gosh, the website's about 4 years old now, and been doing the trainings and the mentoring for a couple years now.
What got you inspired to do that to help other people?
Well, I actually started out being a beauty blogger, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
But because I love to write and I always wanted to be a blogger, but it wasn't something I was passionate about. So I really wanted to do something more that I was passionate about. And my dom actually suggested, why don't you make a BDSM blog? And it just kind of sounded silly and crazy to begin with, but it really just took off and I really liked it. And then I just kept getting more and more questions and advice. And so I thought, well, how about I put it in an online program? And it's just been really successful.
I love that. How often do you post? Do you have a schedule for yourself, or do you just kind of whenever you're inspired?
Right now, kind of whenever I'm inspired, or I get a lot of questions about something, because right now I have dozens of articles because, I've been writing for, 4 years. I've kind of covered a lot and wrote a lot. So there's not a whole lot too much more that I can say on the subject. It's more just, helping people more individually and to apply it in their own life.
Yeah, I love that because you don't really find too many good resources online for these kinds of things. They're kind of I don't know. Some of them I feel like are a little scarier. Like, what am I diving into? But I really love your website because everything's so elegant and beautifully laid out and like not intimidating.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I really wanted to try to do something that was like more professional because there was some things out there, but it was more like pornographic or kind of cheesy. And, there's lots of like online tutorials for bondage and stuff, but I wanted something that was more step by step for like making it a lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's nice coming from a submissive point of view, because I feel like a lot of the other things are more of like a dom point of views. So what kind of like called you to be interested in BDSM to begin with? Did you have like a moment or like a turning point?
Yes and no. So I would say I've been kind of kinky my whole sexual life, just been really drawn to that. I would always call my husband daddy. That was kind of like our dynamic.
Yeah, like fun and playful.
Yeah. But just, really kinky. But I just, it was about, 10 years ago that I just really started researching more about BDSM. And we had done bondage. We do pain play, but not really the dominant and submissive aspects of it. But when I was reading about it, it just really seemed like it clicked for us in our marriage and relationship. So I told him about it and said, hey, I kind of want to try this. And I mean, what husband's going to turn that down? Like, oh, I can tell you to have sex with me whenever I want. So we tried it, and it was, in the beginning, it was good. It was a little rocky, but it was mostly just the fun aspects of it. Like if I forgot to like text him, he'd, give me a spanking, and it was just kind of more lighthearted. But I think it was the first time that he gave me like a real punishment spanking. And I think we were arguing about something, and I have like a hard time like letting go of things. Like a lot of times, I'll keep bringing it up,
until like the loop is closed on it. I understand.
Yeah, exactly. I need to talk about this some more. I need to drag it out more. But, and that's sometimes part of being a female, but it would lead to a lot of arguments. He'd say, I don't want to talk about it anymore. And I just keep bringing it up. But so this one night, it was kind of like the same thing. And he just said, if you don't stop talking about it, I'm going to give you a hard spanking. And like I said before, it was kind of like these fun things we do, oh, I'll spank you if you do this. But he was serious. And, stupid me, I still opened my mouth and said something. And he said, that's it. And he spanked me like really hard. And I cried, but he comforted me afterwards. And we didn't talk about like the argument we were having. And we just went to bed. And we just kind of sat there and was like, did we just like fix years of problems we just had like with BDSM?
Right. So it felt like a liberating moment.
Yeah. Like that's what I needed. Cause like I said, I would, draw things out, but it was just, how do I put it? It just gave me that closure, because I was able, to feel the pain, cry it out and be comforted afterwards.
Yeah. So like put framework to it all.
Yeah. And that's all I really needed, So it kind of just fixed everything right then.
Yeah. I love that, because sometimes we don't realize like how much people just kind of sometimes just need to be told what to do. And then it's like the sternness, it doesn't necessarily need to be out of like aggression or anger, but the sternness sits well. And it's like, okay, I felt that, like that was genuine.
Yeah. And I think a lot of like relationships need it. I think we're like so told like relationships need to be equal, like, but that doesn't work. It's like, even, like they say a boat needs a captain. You can't have two captains on a boat. So it's the same for relationships. There needs to be someone who is, going to step in and say, this is not how it's supposed to be. This is how it's supposed to be. So I think that, was what we needed.
I love that. So like when you guys were getting started, kind of transitioning your life into this, I was reading one of your articles that was talking about how like the information you'd find online versus like what actually living the life, like what did that transition look like for you guys?
Well, I always tell people you have to make it your own. Mm-hmm. So, you kind of online, you'll learn the basics. You'll learn about safe words and contracts and limits and, all those things. So you will get a good grasp of everything online, but then actually living the lifestyle is just, it's so different because like a lot of times we just think about the kink, but then it's like, okay, what do you do when you come home from work and you're tired or you have to deal with the kids and things like that? How do you stay a dom sub couple? It's the stuff that's not as glamorous, but, is part of living the lifestyle. And so you do have to make it your own and, you're going to have your ups and downs, but, just know it's not going to be like it looks like on the internet, on Instagram, so glamorous all the time,
Because it's not always about like the sex and it's not always about like that. There's so much more to it. There's like the mentality, the connection, the learning to conversate.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's work. And that's what people, I think, don't realize. They think, it's just kinky sex, and they don't realize, it's a dynamic that you have to put in the work for, you have to make sure your partner's needs are getting taken care of, your needs are getting taken care of, that, you're not slacking in your role. There's just so much work involved.
Because a lot of times too, I feel like you're, like going through this, like how you were saying, like when you got spanked and then you cried, but then you realized that's what you needed. Like a lot of aspects of BDSM, I feel like is like re-parenting yourself and re-dealing with situations and kind of how to just better process your emotions, right?
I totally agree. I mean, I try not to like stereotype and, like everyone who's in BDSM had a traumatic childhood and that's why they chose BDSM. But I do, see a pattern. And even for myself, like my parents were very like lenient because I was a good kid, the straight A student and all that. But so they were lenient to where like, even if I did mess up, I would never get punished. I was never grounded as a child. And I needed that because I think it's a way of saying like, hey, I care enough about you to want you to do better. You know? And so just instead of just saying like, oh, Alisandra, she's always good. We don't have to worry about her. It's like, well, I want you to worry about me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I want to have standards on myself.
Yeah,
like
exactly. And so I think that's why I was just so drawn to the submissive role, that, being told you're a good girl, but then also being held accountable and for someone to want me to do better, just fulfills all those needs I had.
Yeah. And then so like going into your like day-to-day life outside of being around your husband, do you see like the boost in confidence based off how your relationship has changed through it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, because one thing he tells me is I only need to please him. So if I start worrying about what other people think, he just says, remember, all you need to do is please me. And so that takes just a huge weight off that I don't need to care what people think. It's just, me and him. So it definitely helps.
I love that. Yeah. Cause so many times we absorb so many like anxieties from other people and they're not our own. We just take it on and absorb it. And for what?
Yeah. And, there's times I have, body issues and things like that and self-esteem issues, but to have him always reassure me that I'm pretty, I'm sexy and, all that. But then also, he'll tell me, it's okay if you're not, comfortable right now with it or, but because he's like, it's for me to enjoy,
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's like one of the things we'll do is like, if I'm really like, oh, I just feel like garbage or whatever, I don't feel pretty, I don't feel sexy. he'll just put a blindfold on me during a session and he'll say, you don't have to look if you don't want to, I'm going to look and I'm going to enjoy it. But if you don't want to look, you don't have to look. And that really helps too.
Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful. It sounds like you guys have a really good, hold on, reading each other's body language and kind of understanding, which is beautiful. I feel like sometimes with relationships, you get afraid of having to put all of the work in and you don't realize all of the small details, how much they matter. And as I've been exploring BDSM and the connection that you have to make first, it's amazing how much goes into the trust and the communication. You can't just jump in and start doing it. You really need to build a connection with someone first.
Yes, definitely. And one of the things I had to learn early on is when he says, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? To not sugarcoat it and be oh, nothing. I'm just thinking about my day tomorrow. To really literally tell him what's on my mind. And it could be the stupidest thing in the world, but just to tell him, because a lot of times I'm worried about something or I'm upset about something, but I hold it in.
Yeah.
But if I'm able to share it with him, then he can take on that issue or that problem too, or even just listen, but just not holding back, and I think that's a sign of a good dominant when they're, can tell that something may be bothering their submissive and to ask them, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are you really thinking and feeling, to kind of bring that out.
And showing the awareness that you see that, the surface answers aren't going to cut it right now.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
So what are some of your favorite and least favorite aspects of living the 24/7 lifestyle?
Well, my favorite would just be I get a real satisfaction from being used and being useful, that someone, just sees a purpose in me and, wants that. So, just being useful and making myself useful, and serving my dom, I really find a deep joy in that. And really just, obviously the sex and all that, those are the perks, and I really do enjoy pain. So, that has really helped me too. But just, I think one of my favorite things is just serving my dom and knowing that I'm making him happy. And then for the least favorite things, I think are when there's rules I don't want to do, but I know they're for my own good and I have to do them.
Yeah.
So it's a lot like being a kid. I've come to realize, at least in, a lot of these types of dynamics that are like ours is that, he's taken on this parental role and I'm the child, and just a child knows oh, I don't want to have to do this, but they're a child and they would rather have, protective parents than no parents at all.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
And it's it's not something that's going to hurt you, but something you might need.
Mm-hmm. One of the things he's been doing is putting restrictions on my phone because I've spent so much time on Instagram and all those things. And he's just okay, we're going to have to put restrictions on your phone. And then, I'm just really, we have to do this, but I need it, so that's hard, when you need something, but at the same time, you don't want it.
When you guys are introducing, so say you want to try something new that you're not sure if it's going to push your boundaries or not, do you guys have a ritual you jump into to try and test it out? Or what would you suggest for people who are curious about something, but also kind of scared to try it?
Well, I think especially the submissive needs to journal about it to really kind of break it down. What am I feeling? What am I afraid of? So she can get more comfortable than when they do talk to their dominant. And then I think to talk about it first and not jump into actually doing it, but having a discussion about it. Because if you can't talk about it, then you're not going to be able to do it, Right. So I think, whatever the thing you're wanting to try, really talk about it. And, and then what if something bad happens, how are we going to handle that? So kind of just looking at all the different scenarios around it, how are we going to handle it if we decide we don't like it? How are we going to handle it if one of us really likes it, but one of us really doesn't like it, so like having that conversation beforehand, I think is so important.
Nice. Have you guys ever found an area where one of you really likes something and one of you don't, and you kind of have to negotiate in the middle?
Yeah. I mean, well, I'll give you an example. So I'm not really big on anal sex or anal. And
yeah, I'm the same. I'm like, I don't get it.
Yeah. But he is, and I'm not gonna, tell him like, you're horrible, you're gross, even though I think it's gross, but we also we call it, it's a TPE relationship, a total power exchange. So, he could be a jerk and say, well, you're going to do it anyways. But it's more like he kind of saves those for punishments because he knows I won't really want to do those.
Yeah.
And so when it does happen, he's enjoying it, but I'm not. But I think then in my boundaries, that's okay. It would be worse if I said, okay, I know you like this, so I'll do it for you. And then just kind of lay there and pretend that you like it, right. Okay, I'm meeting you in the middle. But framing it as like a punishment, it's like giving me the liberty to not like it, like it's okay if I don't like this, versus
because you knew what the punishment was kind of.
And I deserved it because I went over on my screen time or whatever. But but yeah, so I don't, and there's nothing really else that I ever feel like, I'm just doing it for him and I don't like it, or I'm, pretending like I like it. I mean, we're both pretty kinky, and I'll usually try, anything once. But,
Well, it's just amazing to me how many couples because it's almost like negotiations would work great within their relationships if they'd understood or even heard the terminology before. But I think some people don't even understand that negotiations in the bedroom can be a thing. And so many women do just submissively take stuff. How you have it is almost like the perfect scenario because, you understand when it's coming, you guys have worked that out. So it's not like something that's traumatizing.
Yeah, no, I definitely think a lot of girls women fall into that trap of, I have to please my partner no matter what. And I think sex has come a long way for women to where, now women's pleasure is something that people talk about. Before it wasn't that way. So yeah, it was just, you do whatever you had to do to make your man happy, and you don't really, have to enjoy any of it. And that's just how it was.
Yeah. Yeah. And now we're kind of seeing the negative side effects of that, where men are just thinking they can take women however they want. And now we're having to clean it up and speak up and kind of tidy and repolish everything.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think just, so much needs to start in the school system. I don't know how it was with you in school, but it was all we learned about was our, fallopian tubes and our uterus, and that's all for having babies. And then the man, he gets an erection, he ejaculates and has an orgasm. It's no one taught us about the clit or anything,
Right.
So, I mean, I think there needs more anatomy talked about in the school systems, for, even girls to know about their bodies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think all we learned in sex ed was we got the condom and the banana, and that's basically all I remember from it.
Everyone remembers that.
Yep. So can you kind of explain the excitement behind the discipline and punishment strategies? How it can revamp relationships for people?
Well, it can revamp relationships. But I mean, a lot of times if a relationship is fizzling, there's always you want to figure out why it's fizzling first and address that. But I mean, if it's just because, it's the same old, then yeah, definitely bringing in the rules and the punishments can definitely help, bring something new. So just the fact that it's something new can be, a really big boost. And especially if you're playing with pain, there's like so many endorphins associated in giving pain and receiving pain. Mm-hmm. So that can really, help, a relationship if it's kind of starting to fizzle out. But I think, kind of just goes back to, what I was saying is just knowing that someone cares enough about you to want to discipline you and give you rules and punishments, that, they're aware of you. And it's not just like, hope you enjoy your day. It's like They're involved in their life.
Yeah. And it's not really, I don't feel like it comes from like a controlling aspect. It is genuinely like to see you do better for yourself and see you be happier and more like liberated and fulfilled.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're doing this and it's, you're seeing negative effects in your life, you're not feeling good about yourself, then, something needs to change. It's, BDSM is supposed to be a good thing. It's supposed to make you happier, improve your life, have more fun in the bedroom. So if it's leaving you more depressed and unfulfilled, then there's a lot of other things going on and you need to kind of back up and talk about it.
So it kind of goes back to like the making sure that your mentality is in a good place first. So you don't want to be jumping into BDSM experiences thinking that it's going to heal things if you haven't first like actually communicated with yourself.
I think so to some degree. I mean, because I know like, I think for DOMs, it's like, if you can't be dominant in your own life, and how are you going to help someone else to kind of get back control from their life? But a lot of submissives do get into their role in the relationship is because they are struggling with things and even mental health issues. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not going to say, well, go fix your mental health issue and then come back and do BDSM, because a lot of people see that it's been beneficial.
Yeah. So like hand in hand almost.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we're not doctors, but some people that's just enough that they need, mm-hmm. Or like you said, it goes hand in hand. And so, it can definitely help, I think, deal with the things that we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there's any correlation between like spiritual life and BDSM lifestyle?
I think so. I mean, I consider myself a spiritual person, a religious person, but I think there has to be some reason that you're doing this that goes beyond your partner, because, especially with rules and things like that, your partner, especially like if you're not living with them all the time, like even my husband, my Dom, he goes to work, mm-hmm. but if he has a role for me, I could just lie and say I did it, but I think that's where the spirituality comes in, where it's like, I'm not just doing it just for him. I'm mm-hmm. also trying to better myself. And, I think that's where the spirituality comes in.
Yeah. Cause it's like something you're both working on together. So mm-hmm. it all pulls together. So I want to talk about kinks a little bit, some like exciting stuff. Do you have any like tips for people who are kind of testing the waters, or maybe people who are like, intermediate kinky, just some fun stuff?
Yeah, I actually have a quiz on the website. It's domsubliving.com/quiz that can kind of help kind of get the ball rolling to see what, kind of your kink personality is like that. But just, reading a lot and kind of keeping a journal of the things that you like, the things that you don't like, just kind of going from there. Obviously you could start with light bondage and spanking and things like that. But yeah, just, read a lot, watch a lot, and just, really reflect on, how it makes you feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things is a lot of people forget that it is about you and your connection. And so they let other people's shame come in, and then they over sit in it. And it's like, if you feel the need to explore these things, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. Like, as long as you're not non-consensually hurting someone.
Yeah. And, the saying, your kink isn't my kink, and that's okay. We don't all have to like the same thing.
Do you have any advice on like creating and starting scenes? Because I feel like that might be hard for people to get started, like being creative on that.
Well, I think it's good to kind of have an idea in your head. I mean, you don't have to always, write out this elaborate scene, but just kind of have an idea of like how you want it to start, how you want it to go, how you want it to end, getting, your basic toys. Sometimes it's always good to like have everything on hand first. You can kind of just lay it out so you're not like, oh shoot, I need to go get that thing. And then it kind of kills the mood, so kind of just have everything ready. But yeah, it definitely depends on, what, you and your partner like. And you can have, different rituals, start with the submissive kneeling at first, and just telling them what's going to happen during the scene and, what they expect of them, kind of have some, like rules in place, but and not just, don't take yourself so seriously, just enjoy yourself. If you start doing one thing and want to change it, don't think, oh, I can't change it, go ahead and change it.
Do you have any advice for like submissives who maybe the communication's not so good, but like if they're in a scene and their dom's not really like paying attention to safe words, do you have any advice to like help the situation?
Yeah. So well, like you said, there's safe words, but if, the submissive isn't comfortable using the safe words, she can even, you can have like a hand gesture or something. She can even just kind of tap the dom and say like, I need a timeout kind of a thing. And, or, just asking for a break to get their thoughts collected. I've noticed that doms do really like their submissive to speak up when they don't like something and when they do like something, because that way it kind of helps guide them. I mean, there's a difference if you're just the submissive just saying, do this, don't do that. I don't like this, if they're directing it the whole time, but a dom does like to have some kind of pointers where you say, I kind of am not really liking that. Can we try something different? Or, oh, I really like that. Can we keep doing that? The dom does like, those cues to kind of help them along.
So like, don't be afraid to be vulnerable and
yeah, definitely.
And then I want to talk about embracing pain play.
Yeah. So I really like pain. So this is like my
same.
And what's interesting is everyone processes pain differently. So what may help one person may not help another. Like, for me to really embrace it is like to really focus on my breath and the breathing, and also focus on where the pain is coming from. So if it's like on my bottom, and we're trying to work up my pain tolerance, instead of like zoning out and picking a spot on the wall and concentrating on that, what helps me is to actually bring my awareness to my body even more and focus on that pain and just focus on my breathing. But I think where people have a hard time embracing the pain is kind of like the mindset around it. Like, why am I getting turned on by pain? Especially the doms. I hear from a lot of doms that are just like, I feel bad that I enjoy hurting my sub. Something must be wrong with me. I must be demented or something, Right. But just how much a sub can enjoy pain, the dom can enjoy giving pain just as well.
I almost feel like it's like the like giving yourself to someone, like completely trusting that at any moment, like your life is basically in their hands when it comes to things like that. So I feel like that trust is kind of what makes them bonded with you when it's happening.
Yeah. I'm a lot that way into choking. I really like choking, but it is that vulnerable, like in the second he can kill me.
Yeah.
So it does, it's that complete trust where like literally my life is in his hands.
Mm-hmm.
I people keep asking me like, write an article on choking. You love choking. But I'm like, there's like so much liability in an article like that.
Yeah. We had mentioned it in a podcast once and I was like, I think I might need to like edit that out because just in case, like it worries me people hearing it as like something fun, but not totally understanding how to be careful with it.
Yeah, definitely. It's not something let's just try this tonight. No, definitely research. No.
And there's like a very strong bond that needs to happen there.
Yeah.
Plus, because you also don't know, like some people, if you haven't known someone for a very long time, it might trigger something in them, so it's like so important to make sure that the connection is really, really there, especially if you're playing with stuff like that. It doesn't want to be like the first partner or like a one night stand where you're like, yes, choke me.
Yeah. And then like a lot of people in the moment, like forget, how are they going to safe word when they're choking? And they, in that moment, they think, oh, shoot, so that's why you have to talk about, okay, are we going to have a gesture? Am I going to tap you? What is it going to look like? Because you don't want to realize that in the moment,
Yeah. Do you have any advice for people who don't necessarily have a kink partner, but are like looking for one?
Well, I think you have to first really understand what you want, because you don't want to get a kink partner when you're just like, I don't know what I really want. And, I guess I'll just try everything because, you may find a person that's really going to take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
So first, know what it is you like, know what it is you don't like. And if you're looking for, a partner that you can do kink with, really trust them and don't take everything, they say as fact. There's so many people out there that are just like, I'm an experienced dom. And, you kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt. And so, start slow, but, as far as meeting people, a lot of times people have had success just meeting people that they thought were vanilla, and they met them at work or at school or, and it turns out they're kinky or they were able to introduce kink to them. So, I think everyone kind of has a kinky side, but
Definitely.
And there's like online places and, dating apps, but, you really have to be careful and just, and take it slow too. Cause there are a lot of people that will take advantage of it, even, women, who are dominatrix, people will take advantage of the men monetarily, so it's not just sex, there's, the money thing too.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever had like moments or have you ever had, because you talk to a lot of people in the community. So like moments where boundaries are pushed or triggered, do you have advice for how to handle that situation?
Yeah, I think it depends on how it was triggered and pushed. Like if it was an accident, it's totally different than how you're going to handle it if the person just really didn't respect that boundary.
Like blatantly pushed it.
Yeah, if they blatantly push it and it's also how they react too. If they're super apologetic and, swearing they're never going to do it again versus like, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. It tells a lot. But if it was like a complete accident, you really have to stop and talk to the person and let them know, like, you crossed one of my boundaries. And this is why I have this boundary. And again, it says a lot how they respond to that, and then have a plan for what's going to happen next time. Because if it keeps happening and happening, there's a reason. Either this person isn't, the person who keeps breaking it isn't mature enough for BDSM. Mm-hmm. Or there's a lack of communication or something. So, figuring out why it happened and then how to prevent it from happening in the future.
I really love the way that people who truly know how to take care of this treat it, because it's not just like, it's just so beyond sex play. And honestly, it's so beyond how a lot of people operate in their like normal relationships, which is crazy to me because it's like an entire world that is like opened up that just removes all of these like societal constructs on how everything should be. And it puts you in such a vulnerable place of needing to, you know, figure it out with someone else.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it leaves you so vulnerable, and you learn things about yourself that you never knew too. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's such a, you know, a learning process.
Do you want to talk about aftercare a little bit, just so people kind of know how they should be treated afterwards?
Yeah. So aftercare, you know, for those that don't know, is what happens after a scene because, you know, hormones and adrenaline is really high, and it kind of helps bring them down easily. And, you know, plus a BDSM scene can be, you know, so emotionally draining. It can bring out emotions that you didn't even know. So always, like, first and foremost, I always think, you know, the dom needs to be really attentive to the submissive. So, you know, if he's not, and, you know, he's in the other room getting himself a glass of water and stuff, you know, that's kind of a red flag. Like, he should be, you know, his main concern should be the submissive, making sure she's okay, taken care of. And so things like that can be like covering her up. You know, a lot of times, you know, after a scene, we can be freezing, we're naked, we're sweaty, and, you know, the adrenaline has dropped. So, you know, getting her a blanket, you know, something to drink. If, you know, you guys have been doing bondage, then, you know, you're going to want to, like, you know, massage the areas that were, you know, tied up and things like that. And also just talking and asking, how was that for you? You know, did it bring up anything for you? And just keep checking in. And I think one thing that's really important is for the dom to never assume, like, okay, aftercare's over, you know, we can move on. Like, it's, the submissive will stay in aftercare until they don't need it anymore, you know? So it's not like a set, like, okay, we did 10 minutes, you're good, kind of a thing. I mean, sometimes a submissive can need aftercare even the next day. You know, me and my dom once, we went on a trip, and we went in, it was like our anniversary. We went into a hotel. It was like such a long, kinky, you know, every fantasy trip. And then we came home, and I had so much sub drop. And so even like for days, like almost that whole week, we came home. Mm-hmm. And so he really had to, you know, give me even more aftercare than just the typical after scene, you know, aftercare. So it can't be, you know, something that keeps going days later.
Did you have to ask for that, or did he just recognize?
Well, it was weird because I had never had that happen before, where it would affect me so much the next day. Mm-hmm. So I was talking to him, and I just kept saying, like, I don't feel right, like almost to where, like, I feel like I'm sick or something, or depressed, but I can't figure it out. And so he said, you know, it probably was because we had this huge long weekend of, you know, doing all these sessions and everything. It probably took a lot out of you. Mm-hmm. And you're having a hard time, you know, dealing with that sub drop. And then, so then he knew, okay, you're going to need more aftercare, and, you know, making sure I was taken care of.
Mm-hmm. I love it because it's like the dom's in control, but really the submissive is in control. Like when it's done properly, and if the dom's like truly paying attention.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I always, like, a lot of submissives always come to me and they say, I want to be a submissive, but I'm afraid, like, I'm going to lose myself. Like, I'm only going to be doing these things for him. And I'm not going to have like a mind of my own or anything. But it's like, you have to remember, like, he's not making you do these things. Like, you're still the one doing them. Mm-hmm. You know, a dom can have roles and all this, but you're still the one following through on those roles and doing it. It's not like you become a robot. You still have that free will to either follow or not follow. So, you know, it's still up to the submissive to make her own choices.
That's a good point to make, because I feel like a lot of people think that submissive role just means that they're just like, nope. Whatever I'm told is what I'm going to do. Do you have advice for doms to kind of like help them be more aware, or certain things to look at to like notice if they're not being a good dom?
Well, it always boggles my mind how people like just don't talk to their partner, So it's like, that's always like the first thing. Like I'll have doms like message me, like, I think something's going on with my sub. And it's like, well, talk to her.
Yeah.
So always, talk to your partner and, really see how they're doing. Give them journal assignments, journal prompts, things like that to do on a regular basis. Like me and my dom, we have like a really good check-in every Sunday night, where I can just talk freely and things like that. And then asking like really good questions, not like, how are you doing? Where she can just say, fine, I'm good,
Right.
say, well, what could I be doing better to support you as a dominant? If you can change something about our relationship, what would it be? So better questions, I think, can help draw the submissive.
Yeah. Like really jump in their mind.
Mm-hmm. And really, notice the body language, and anytime you see a change in your submissive, if her sleeping changes, her diet changes, or, just her demeanor, just really pick up on that.
Mm-hmm. And ask further questions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So last thing that we'll get into before we go is your 50 Shades of Grey rant. I've been excited for this, and that's why I wanted to save it for last.
Oh, my 50 Shades of Grey rant. Okay. So I will say this. I'm not anti 50 Shades of Grey. There's a lot of good things that came out of it. Like I always tell people, like my mom read the books and now my mom knows what safe words are, So, I mean, there's a lot of good that has come out of it, but it's fiction. It's not real life. And, I think a lot of people get into this lifestyle because of it, which I always say it doesn't matter how you started the lifestyle. It's what keeps you going. But a lot of people start in the lifestyle because they read the books or watched the movie and they hold on to it. They don't like evolve. They think, oh, I have to be like them. And that's what real BDSM is. So I think it did do a lot, but it also did a lot of damage too, because it is this fantasy book. It's erotica, and it's not a BDSM book,
No.
in the slightest, it's not, it has BDSM aspects. It has kinky sex and, it's, an erotica book, but I think people kind of took it and ran with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of my audience, has come to me, from it. And I do talk about it on my website because I know people are interested in it, but I do think it's also kind of like separated the BDSM community because there's those that are like, I don't really care about it. And there's others that are like very anti against it. Mm-hmm. And it's like kind of the elitist kind of type of thing. But I think a lot of people don't like the books or the movie is because it was really like the first time that like there was like a really strong, attractive male lead where the woman was the one that wasn't, as attractive or, it's like he's so rich and things like that. So I think a lot of doms in the lifestyle had a problem with that. Like it was portraying, all doms as these rich, muscular, sexy people, and that's not real life,
Right.
Yeah. But, yeah, it's very interesting because, I mean, the person who wrote it really didn't know anything about BDSM. I think, she tried, but yeah, if, you're listening to this and, you got interested into BDSM because of 50 Shades, that's great, but it's fiction. Put it aside now and, start learning what real BDSM is.
Yeah. And they don't even I feel like they don't even glorify like the actual connection that happens between it with like the consent and the non-consent. It's just mostly kind of like abuse glorified.
Yeah.
And I feel like that allowed a lot of people who are very like egotistical to think that a lot of things are okay in the bedroom when they're absolutely not. if you're not communicating about it.
Yeah. And I think it's caused a lot of submissives to become abused because they get it in their head, they get the sub frenzy where I want to be a sub now. And, I want to serve a dom, and there must be doms.
To please them.
Yeah. There must be doms out there, just like Christian Grey, that need a submissive. And what they find is really a fake dom that's, kind of using the 50 Shades stuff to kind of control, the person.
Well, I'm assuming you heard of there's one guy in I forget his last names, but Army Hammer or something like that. Yeah. Do you have any opinions on all of that when that information came out? Did you hear anything about it?
Yeah, I did. And it's hard because I always think I don't know these people, there's always two sides to every tale, but right. So I don't always know everything. But one thing that really stood out to me, because he was cheating on his wife and everything, and that he, had this BDSM lifestyle on the side. He said, I couldn't live that lifestyle with my wife because she's the mother of my children and I respect her too much. And I thought that was horrible because it's almost saying if you have a sub, then they don't really need respect.
Well, and you're just treating your subs like meat at that point, and that's not it at all.
Yeah, I think, it should be backwards. I love this person. I respect them so much. I want them to be my submissive, not I respect them so they can't be my submissive, So I think he is missing, all the respect and the boundaries and, all those foundations. And so that was I thought was just way off, and unfortunately with his power and his fame and all that, he was able to, hurt a lot of women. And it was, really, really bad. And I always think too, it's when something like that comes out, how much more is going on behind the scenes in other relationships that we don't even know of? It's scary.
Yeah, because that's just the surface of it, really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you'd like to add or you think would be beneficial for people who are listening?
Yeah, just, remember to have fun. Not everyone is going to have the same kinks, but just do your best not to judge others, but, more importantly, don't judge yourself either. It's a journey. And it really is meant to be enjoyed.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. You have no idea how grateful I am that you made the time today. I swear for 2 weeks, I was contemplating messaging you. And I'm no, she's not going to want to. Who am I? What am I doing? But thank you so much.
No, this was a lot of fun. I loved it. It was amazing. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Wow. I hope you enjoyed the interview that Suzii did. If you want to check her out and check out her podcast, head to justpressforeplay.com. She also has some really cool merch that she sells there, but definitely go binge all the Just Press Foreplay episodes. They're all so good. Now, all of the links and resources will be on our show notes page at domsubliving.com/029. But I'm just so really grateful for Suzii asking me to be on her podcast so long ago, but she kind of just popped my podcast cherry with being my very first interview that I did. So hopefully the episode sparked you to take action in your journey, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for you. Thank you for joining me and being a part of the Dom Sub Living community, and a huge thank you to Suzii from Just Press Foreplay. You can check out all of the details and links for this episode in the description and show notes. And be sure to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. But until next time, keep embracing your power and pleasure through Dom Sub Living.